Hey, everybody, I'm Jeff Sandstrom, and I'm here with my good friend Todd Elliott from Philo. And we wanted to take just a few minutes and share maybe a quick devotional thought for you and your team for Easter. You know, we're so busy planning for a big event like this,
Yeah,
right? It feels like we're getting ready for the Super Bowl.
right.
The tendency, though, is that in all of our planning and doing, we risk missing some key moments for us.
Yeah,
We're head down, following a cue sheet, try not to miss what's next. We're excited about what's happening, but we're so focused on not missing a cue, we might risk missing what God has for us.
yeah. I mean, I think the task ahead of us is so huge,
Yeah,
and the list of to-dos is endless,
yeah,
that I think it's so simple to lose sight of kind of what we're doing because of what needs to get done.
yeah. I totally agree. Especially in a church that sets the bar high for production, especially at a time like Easter.
Yeah,
I feel like if we're not careful, our worship and production teams, even though they're executing everything
yeah,
and helping to create this environment for people, they can become the most spiritually vulnerable people on campus because they run the risk of missing a personal encounter with what God has for them.
yeah. I think it's so easy to get, again, wrapped up in all that needs to be done in the service
Yeah,
that even we were talking earlier, like by the third service, you've got it down.
right.
And the tendency is to, okay, I'm just going to do some emails I haven't been paying attention to, or just not paying attention to what's going on in the room. And I think, yeah, just because we're there doesn't mean we're receiving what is happening
Right.
in the room.
The way I've said it before is proximity to the event
Yeah.
doesn't equal engagement in it.
Yeah.
Right? So this applies to every Sunday, right? Every weekend. But I think for Easter, we wanted to take a minute just to sort of see if we could find anything in the Easter narrative itself that could maybe stick out in terms of a detail or two that can help bring this point home, because we really want you and your teams to engage, to be leaning in, to be eyes up, trying to engage with what God has for us.
Yeah.
John's gospel starts, John 3:16 is for God so loved the world. And sometimes we think that we're doing this for others. We're doing
Right.
this for
The
our
world.
church, the
Yeah.
community, the world.
Yeah.
But Jesus died for you, right? And there is this personal, intimate, individual aspect of the gospel that I think it's important for us not to miss.
Yeah. I think it's so easy to get wrapped up in what we're doing for others that we forget that, Jesus at Easter, I mean, he died and rose again for us,
Yeah.
for me, for
For
you,
you, right,
not just for us.
right.
I think it's so easy to make kind of what we're doing a plural idea,
Mhm.
us and instead of me.
Yeah,
And I think Easter is a great time to just remember that all that we're talking about, all this work we put in, the message at Easter is for me,
yeah.
not just for others.
Exactly. There's a heaviness and there's a weight to Good Friday and the crucifixion and how this sacrifice is immense,
Yeah.
right? And I don't want us to lose sight of that. But Easter is also all about celebrating the resurrection, right? That's our hope, that's our joy. That's what we have life in and new
Yeah.
life in. And so there's a couple of things that stuck out to me as I was reading the various accounts of the Easter story.
Yeah.
And one that stuck out particularly was Mary Magdalene when she goes to the tomb to prepare the body because they didn't have time
Right.
the night before, and so she walks up and he's not there.
Yeah.
And she is just confused and heartbroken and dumbfounded and grief-stricken and all these things, and she turns to walk away and encounters who she thinks is the gardener.
Yeah.
It's actually Jesus, but she says, "Where have you taken my Lord? Please tell me so I can go and find him."
Right.
And she has no idea that it's Jesus until he says, "Mary."
Yeah.
And then she wakes up and she's like, "Oh, it's you, my life, my hope, my Lord." Her eyes are opened when he says her name. And I think this weekend, he's calling us by name too.
Yeah. For sure.
He wants to say, "Todd, I've
Yeah.
done this for you. Jeff, I've done this for you. Jeremy, Elizabeth, whatever your name is, he's done this for you." He's calling your name in a very personal and intimate way.
Yeah. I just, that picture of Mary looking for Jesus in the places she thinks he'll be,
Yeah,
and Jesus is showing up in an unexpected way.
yeah,
And I think it's so easy for us to be looking for Jesus where we think he should be instead of being open to having our eyes open to him speaking to us in an unexpected
Yeah.
place.
It reminds me of another part of the story when, after Jesus is risen, there's two disciples on the road to Emmaus,
Yeah.
and Jesus kind of shows up walking alongside them, and they're just having a conversation. And all of a sudden, they're telling him the story, not knowing that it's him.
Yeah.
And the scripture says, he was recognized when he broke the bread.
Yeah.
In the same way that at the Last Supper, he broke the bread and said, "This is my body broken for you." He broke bread with these guys, and their eyes were opened. It's like there's this parallel narrative where when Jesus breaks the bread, his broken body is revealed to them as the resurrected Lord.
Yeah.
And then they can go and tell everyone what they've seen and heard and literally change the world.
Yeah, I love just even the parallels between the story with Mary and the story with the disciples, that looking for Jesus in some place and or head down, kind of worried about my own problems instead of looking up and recognizing Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think in our context at Easter, it's so easy to just be going through the motions or be kind of trapped where we are in our own thinking instead of being aware and being on the lookout for where is Jesus here and how does he want to affect my life.
Yeah. Another example later on in Luke's gospel, Luke 24, when the disciples are on the beach having breakfast. And one of my favorite verses in the narrative is, Luke 24:42. They gave him a piece of broiled fish and he ate it.
Yeah.
Like he was able to prove to them that he was a real human. He wasn't a ghost
Yeah.
like they thought they were seeing.
Yeah.
He could actually eat and partake in what they were doing and meet them where they are
Yeah.
and do what he used to do with them, just in a new way,
Yeah.
in a new covenant, in a new expression of what God had for them. And they were tasked then with taking this message to everyone they could.
Yeah. Even just the idea later on of doubting Thomas, we're all pretty familiar with that story. Just to be able to, touch Jesus and know that, he's real.
Yeah.
Real for Thomas.
Right.
Not just an idea, but a real person.
And the fact that Thomas even says, I don't believe unless I can touch him and feel him and know that he's real.
Yeah.
And Jesus is like, okay, here you go. And at that point, Thomas says, "My Lord and my God," like it really is you.
Yeah. Yeah.
The fact that Jesus is willing and able and wants to meet us where we are.
Yeah.
So in our serving this weekend, I hope you remember that Jesus wants to meet you where you are. That as we execute all these details, as we do care about doing it well,
Yeah.
we want to be excellent. Especially because we have so many visitors, so many family from out of town, so many people who maybe only go to church once a year,
Yeah.
and this is it. Like we feel the weight of that opportunity.
Right. Right.
We don't want to miss a cue. We don't want to
Right.
distract. We don't want to have feedback or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just don't miss what Jesus has for you individually, personally, intimately in this season.
And I think too, thinking about the idea of, we're trying to create a distraction-free environment and the pressure around Easter time could be so intense.
Yeah.
The thing about these stories that I love is that God is showing up in unexpected ways, regardless of the circumstances.
Yeah.
In each of those encounters. And so for the people in the audience, God can show up regardless of if we miss a cue or if we're late with the lyrics. Our job is not to make people encounter God. That's God's responsibility.
Right.
And so we need to do our best to create a great environment, but it's not up to us how people will respond. And so I think that's important to remember. But then also, in a similar way, God wants to move in us. And it's our responsibility to be available to whatever he wants to do, not just through us, but in us personally, at Easter time.
Well, the great thing is, these encounters right after the resurrection set the table for a group of people who were willing to literally give their lives for the mission, which was to spread the word, which was to make disciples where they were, and then literally to the uttermost parts of the earth. And we get to be a part of that same commission.
Mm-hmm.
2,000 years later, we're in that story.
Yeah.
We get to help them spread the word,
Yeah.
so to speak. And so as we do that this weekend, I hope and pray that you'll be engaged, that you'll not just be so focused on the task that you forget that God has something for you in these moments, and that we can use that as a reminder for every week of the year.
Yeah.
Even in the middle of the summer when it feels like drudgery and Sunday's coming and we're just kind of copying and pasting. We're not doing that. We have an opportunity to be used by God in the way we serve. Well, thanks, Todd, for helping us share some of these insights. I want you to know that we at MXU and Philo, we're praying for you and your teams as you engage with your communities this weekend. I know Easter can be, a joy-filled time. Sometimes, though, it can be a really pressure-packed time.
For sure.
So I hope you can take these ideas and use them as a reminder to you and your team that Jesus wants to meet you and has something for you specifically, individually, and intimately this Easter season.